I'd like to cover today a very important element of the fundamentals of your game, which has to do with the chalk for your cue tip. Now, there's a general assumption by most people that when you chalk your cue stick, that it puts that gripping action on the end of the tip because the leather is kind of slick sometimes and the cue ball is real slick, and if you don't chalk up, you're going to get that really strange sound called a miscue. Let me kind of illustrate that. Most of you know what that looks like. You go like that and you kind of make that really weird sound and you hit the ball and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. The miscue, of course, is very interesting because when you do miscue, most people, the first thing you hear is that chalk's free, and of course you have to pay for your chalk normally, at least I do. So I'm going to explain really another purpose of the chalking, which is not only to eliminate that miscue, but to create what I call the interlude before you get ready to shoot your shot. This is very, very important because when you're preparing yourself for the shot, or what we call the pre-stance logic of the shot, you want to stand behind the cue ball, stand back from the table about 2 to 3 feet. As you're putting the chalk on the end of your stick, you're having this timeout base. And in the timeout, you're looking at the cue ball, the object ball, you're looking at the object ball traveling to the pocket. You're actually seeing in your mind the entire thing take place. And through that process, you're chalking. And that allows you that time to do that. Once you've got your chalking all finished, the total process is done, you go ahead and put your chalk down, take a couple of those little rhythm strokes, we call it, come down into the shot, go back and forth, come back real slow, and shoot the shot. And if you do that, you'll have the proper chalking process during that interlude in your game, according to Dr. Q. Forming the stance. Ah, yes, forming the stance. Very, very important that when you're playing this game to position your body in the correct relationship to the cue ball. Let's just kind of go through a few steps here that are going to help you do that. First of all, you want to position yourself with your cue stick, and most cue sticks, by the way, will have a certain balance point on them. When you hold your cue stick across your finger like this, the cue stick's going to balance like on the weights of a scale. And if you move your hand back about 4 to 6 inches like that, and hold it right like that, right down by your side, straight down by your side, and kind of move up to the cue ball with the end of your cue stick like it. See the tip here? The tip happens to be about 1/4 to 1/2 inch from the cue ball. That's what's called the address point of the cue ball. So at that point in time, when you're at that point, you've got yourself in the right position and distance from the cue ball. Once you've acquired that direct address point position, you then turn sideways to the shot, bend over, and your feet should have a balance between them. In other words, a position which creates that balance. And I call it the balance between the feet because you want to have an equal balance between the two of them. Once you have that, you'll not only be balanced in the physical position, but you'll be balanced mentally into your game as far as having everything with rhythm and fluency. So when you go through the shot, it's just like that. And that's how you form the stance, according to Dr. Q. There are 2 types of bridges you can use in your game in which you're holding your cue stick properly. One is called the closed bridge, and one is called the open bridge. Today we want to go into a method of developing the proper open bridge. You'll notice that the hand is placed on the table with the fingers together. This is step 1. Put the hand on the table, all the fingers are against each other. Then you slowly spread the fingers, and you'll notice that the fingers here, as they're spread open, allow for a good solid base to the hand of the table. Put a little bit of pressure into the table. The third step is to bring the thumb up and form a bridge like that, which is called the V. You'll notice the V right here where the cue stick goes. We call this the V bridge. We call it the tower bridge. You can see it looks like a tower. And we also call it the open bridge. When you use this type of bridge, the cue stick will sit right there and go nice and back and forth very easily. Notice how nice it flows back and forth. Now you want to also make sure that your thumb doesn't fall down like that. So pretend there's a little drop of super glue between that thumb and that index finger. Then just put your cue right there again. Swing back and forth. And let the cue stick go right through the V. And if you do that, you'll have the proper V bridge, tower bridge, or open bridge, according to Dr. Q. In our fundamental tips, we covered the V bridge, open bridge, or tower bridge. What I'd like to cover right now is what's many times referred to as the professional bridge, even though many of the beginning players will learn to do this also. The closed bridge is designed for a specific control of shots like in the draw where you have to hit the cue ball harder and things like that. So let's get into the formation of the closed bridge. You'll notice that the hand starts out in a very unique way. We just simply make a fist. We're going to keep this very simple process. We'll make a fist like this and keep it straight in the air. Now, you don't want your hand to fall down. Keep it straight up in the air like that. And then we're going to take the index finger with the thumb and create a loop. In other words, we're going to touch the finger tip right to the edge of the thumb, and that creates a loop. Now, in that loop, the cue stick goes. If you're having a hard time keeping that loop, you might want to put a drop of super glue right there between those two fingers, and you'll have those so they'll stay right against each other. As the cue stick goes in the loop, then we simply spread the fingers on the table like this underneath the loop. So let's go through that again. The fist straight in the air, making the loop, connecting the index finger tip to the thumb, and placing the cue stick in the loop, and then simply creating the foundation for the loop with the three fingers spread out underneath it. Now, when you're in that position, you're going to have what's called a good, solid, closed bridge. There's one other thing here we need to keep in mind, and that's the tension that the cue stick must be as it goes through the loop. So let's kind of illustrate that now. You'll notice here we have the cue stick. I'm going to hold it in this position. And if you hold it too tightly with this loop, you're not going to be able to move the cue stick through there, and it gets kind of sticky. And some people use powder. Actually, what you can do is you can just simply lighten the tension on this finger, and the cue stick will slowly go through your hand like that. Now, you don't want it to fall out, but you want it to be a nice, smooth, consistent, steady tension. Another way you can approach that is you can start in this position and then bring the hand back down to the table with the closed bridge already in position. So that's the way to form the closed bridge where you have to use it for certain types of more difficult shots. And that's also according to Dr. Q. I'd like to show you the grip today on your cue stick, which is your rear holding hand as opposed to the front hand, which is for the bridge. There must be a harmony between the bridge and the grip. So let's take a closer look at that grip. The first thing you want to do is you want to cradle the cue stick in the fingers of the hand. Just put them in there, just curve your hand like that, and cradle the cue stick in there. Then move your thumb over to the side of the cue stick and point it straight down toward the floor. That's very important. Now, some people put their thumb on top of the cue stick like that, but when they do that, they have a tendency to push the stick out of position. So it's very important to have that thumb straight down alongside the cue stick and let it be pointing 90 degrees toward the floor. Just a little bit of pressure. Now, if the hand tightens up like that, you're going to see those blood vessels coming out of your hand, and that's not going to help you to have the cue stick going in a nice, fluent motion. So it's important to let the cue stick just settle into the cradle, thumb down, and you'll see an opening on the back side of the hand here. That allows your hand, as you move back and forth, to have a nice, gentle hold on the stick. It's kind of like what I call squeezing the Charmin. Don't squeeze too tightly. Nice and smooth, back and forth, in a nice pendulum swing. And when you do that, you'll have a grip on your game, according to Dr. Q. Aiming is several steps in your game. I always enjoy teaching the aim because most people think of it as just simply putting the object ball into the pocket. I like to send the cue ball to the object ball. This first step involves shooting the object ball straight into the pocket down a straight line. It's a very simple concept. You notice here on the table we have a 3-ball, and I'm going to explain what's called the object ball travel line. It's a very simple concept. The object ball is lined up for the pocket, and I'll lay my sticker so you can see that real well. There's a straight line right to the center of that pocket. So at this point, when the object ball is straight into that pocket, you have the maximum width that you can enter the pocket to. If I take this 3-ball and I move it to the left, my left, over like this, the angle to the pocket is much harder to make the ball in. If I move it over this direction, it also becomes more difficult. As the object ball moves toward the center line of the pocket, you have a much wider chance of getting that ball in there. So again, there's a straight line right to the pocket from the object ball to, that's called the object ball travel line, a straight line. Then when you line up for the shot, you're simply shooting the ball straight down that line to the widest part of the pocket. Now, a great exercise you can do in this to practice this very, very simple principle is to put 15 balls on the table and just shoot each ball into a different pocket. Pick your shot, pick your pocket, and shoot it in without a cue ball. We don't want to enter the cue ball into this aiming process just yet. Just simply the concept of shooting a ball down a straight line into the pocket. Later we'll add the cue ball to this entire picture. But for right now, use that as part of your initial stages to aiming, and you'll be able to play a much better game, according to Dr. Q. The second step to aiming is a principle called the ghost ball principle. Very, very important concept to understand. You'll notice here we have an object ball sitting on top of a little training tool. Now I'm going to raise this ball up so you can see what's under. There's an arrow. That arrow happens to be pointing toward that pocket. If you remember in our first exercise on aiming, we were shooting object balls straight into the pocket, going down a straight line. So underneath that object ball is that straight line. Just so happens that object ball also is 2 1/4 inches in diameter. We'll bring a cue ball in here to the other circle, and you'll notice that it fits exactly in the center of that circle. That's also 2 1/4 inches. And when the cue ball is sitting against the object ball, it's in a direct line for that pocket, or wherever you want to make that object ball into the pocket. So this is called a cue ball in a position of a ghost ball. As I move it out of the picture, you'll notice that the area where the cue ball was is now the area that we want to actually aim to. But we're going to be more specific. We're going to aim to the center of this point. Now, one of the ways we can do that is to take the cue tip and put it right on the center of that circle. That's the center of the cue ball again. Bring it straight back to the cue ball, and the cue ball would be struck and go straight down that line. You notice that there's a straight line. Shoot it just like that. If the cue ball is at an angle over here, you'll have another angle. The cue stick will be pointing to the center again, and the cue ball must end in exactly the center of the ghost ball. In other words, wherever this cue ball is as it moves around, it always has to end up down a straight line toward the center of this ghost ball. Now, if you don't have a ghost ball trainer, what you can do is you can do it like my wife does at Miss Q. She has a very unique concept. We'll take this aim trainer out of here, and she does something that is not in any book I've ever seen. Learned a lot from her over the years, and this is a very unique, simple point. She'll go to the contact point of the object ball, go straight down to the cloth, and then move the stick back about half the width of a cue ball. Now, you've got a really good idea. You can actually see that and envision that in your mind. And you'll notice it comes back to the cue ball, just like that. If the cue ball is at an angle, she still does that. She goes to the center point of the object ball, down to the cloth, comes back halfway, center of a ghost ball, and then she puts her hand on the cue stick and swivels over to the cue ball. Again, shooting down a straight line. So it's one straight line after another. Straight line, straight line, straight line, no matter where it is. And as long as you aim for the center of that ghost ball, you're going to be able to do the second part of aiming, which is going to take you to the next level and beyond, according to Dr. Q. Up to this point in our instructional series, we've covered the basic mechanics of pool. Today we're going to be covering the use of English. Now, English not in terms of hitting the cue ball on the side, right or left, but by hitting the cue ball in what's called the vertical line applications of the tip to the cue ball. That would be high, center, and stop. We'll cover the draw a little bit later. These are also called CBC applications, or cue ball control factors. You'll notice we'll start here with the cue ball with the red dot as an indicator as to where we're going to be striking the cue ball. Here the cue ball is being struck in the high part, and when you hit the cue ball with the tip right at the high point, or the red dot, the cue ball follows for position on the one ball in the corner pocket. The next position of contact for the tip is in the center of the cue ball. Now, the center of the cue ball is referred to as a follow hit also, but it is not as much follow as the other one. Illustrate this, hitting the cue ball in the center and hitting it. And the ball rolls, but instead of rolling for the 1, it rolls for position on the 7 in the corner pocket. So it doesn't roll quite as far. And the third application is the one which is what most of the professionals use when they play, and it's called the stop hit. It's a very, very important shot because most of your shots you want to learn to control the cue ball. The cue ball is not struck real low like this, but it's struck a little bit higher. So it's between dead center and maximum low. When you strike the cue ball right there with about a medium speed hit, the cue ball stops in position and you have a straight-in shot to the corner pocket. So with these three types of strikes on the cue ball, the center, the high, and the stop, you'll be able to have better control throughout your game, according to Dr. Q. In the early stages of your game, you learn how to control the cue ball by hitting on the vertical line with the follow and the center and the stop. What I'd like to cover in this segment is how to apply the draw effect to the cue ball, which is considered one of the most difficult effects to put on any type of a round sphere. I want to kind of explain this in terms of how in the mind, how you can kind of feel the tip actually gripping the cue ball. I'm going to use my hand, the fleshy part of the hand here. We're going to strike the cue ball, and you'll notice the gripping effect. So it would be like this in your mind. You would go like this and chop, and the ball comes back. We'll do that a couple times. You see how the ball comes back. In other words, what's happening is the hand is actually gripping the cue ball with the fleshy part, and it causes a gripping action. So in your mind, we want you to think about the hand actually being your cue tip. And as long as you think about it in that way, you'll be able to make the cue stick hit the cue ball and make the cue ball come back after it hits the object ball. Here you'll notice that the red circle is at the very low part of the cue ball. Now you can draw there, you can draw a little bit higher, but the real key is you don't want to go down so low that you actually scoop the ball. That can be from a mechanical glitch, or it can be also just because you're too low. So we'll start with that position. We'll go through and we'll actually strike the cue ball at the low position. We're going to use a little bit faster wrist action on the grip side, going through the cue ball with a gripping action like this. When you stroke with a gripping action, the cue ball comes back toward you, and then you can hit your position for the next shot into the corner pocket. And that's all, of course, according to Dr. Q. Well, you're learning how to control the cue ball now. Let's go right to the top end of the rung as far as these tip applications. We covered high, we hit center, and we hit the low. We also hit some stop action in there. Now I want to show you the lateral spin. The lateral spin is where you actually hit the cue ball on the side. And this is a very interesting application. Sometimes people hit it on the right side, and sometimes people hit it on the left side. And depending on which side you hit it on, it has a different reaction when it comes off a cushion. So let's just illustrate the reaction coming off the cushion now. We'll use a stripe so you can actually see the effect of the object ball when it hits the cushion. When you hit the cue ball, in this case the stripe, on the right side, I want you to watch what the object ball does coming off the cushion. The cue ball comes off the cushion to the right, or in this case the object ball comes off the cushion to the right. And when you hit it on the left side, the cue ball or the object ball comes off the cushion to the left. So again, left goes left and right goes right when it comes off the cushion. Now, in application to a shot, there are a few other items we must consider. When we hit the cue ball on the left side, what's going to happen is, and this is not really seen when you're shooting fast, but when you shoot slower, the cue ball will actually do what's called squirt. It will actually leave your stick and go offline from where you're aiming. It actually squirts right when you hit the cue ball on the left side. If you hit it on the right side, it squirts to the left off of where you're aiming again. So you have to make a compensation for the aim. Now when you elevate your cue stick a little bit, the cue ball actually curves back. In other words, if you hit right English, it squirts left and curves back right. And when you hit left English, it squirts right and curves back left. All of which adds to an extreme amount of complication when it comes to the application of side spin, or what we call lateral spins. So I don't recommend you use a lot of lateral spins in your game, but if you do use them, make sure that you practice them a lot first, according to Dr. Q. Well, we've covered just about all the spins that you can put on a cue ball. The vertical hits for cue ball control. We've also covered the lateral spins left and right. Now I want to give you some of the more exotic spins of pool, the high left, high right, low left, and low right, which you only want to use in very, very limited situations. Let's go to the cue ball and see what that's all about. The four quadrants of English application are the high right, the high left, the low right, and the low left. Now once again, those are not going to help you control the cue ball very well, but they are going to be used in some very limited situations for position play. The effect of the English is another thing. If we take and hit a cue ball with high left or high right, you're going to have different effects again. High left, when it hits a cushion, goes to the left off the cushion. And high right, when you hit it, goes to the right off the cushion. Now you remember from our vertical hits, it went pretty much straight and came back. You remember that when we used dead right and dead left, that we actually applied, it went an extreme amount of right or left. Once you put high with it, it loses some of the right and left effect. The next little part of this is to explain what the low right and the low left does. Here we have our 12 balls of cue ball again, and we're going to strike the cue ball in the extreme low right quadrant of it this time, way down here in this low right part. The beautiful part of this is that when you hit the ball, it will come back to this cushion, and it will spin to the left down for position on another ball at the end of the table. So it does exactly the opposite of what you think it might do when it actually draws. So low right when you hit the ball, and the ball comes back and spins down for position for the ball at the other end of the table. You'll notice how nice that ball rolls down for position. Now, so when you're using those exotic spins, you want to remember, only use them in limited situations, and only use them when you want to have more fun at the game, too, according to Dr. Q. One of the greatest aspects of playing a game of pool is when you're in touch with the feel of the speed control of your cue ball. If you'll notice here on the table, now at this end of the table we have the 1 and the 3 ball, and at this end we have the 2 and the 4 ball. These actually represent different speeds in terms of lengths of the table, which is a good way to define speed. I want to illustrate to you what I mean by that now is if we take the cue ball and we place it about 6 to 8 inches off this cushion, and you hit the cue ball at what we call a slow speed, the cue ball will roll down to that end of the table, and when it comes down to this end, it's going to end up within about 12 inches of this cushion down here. That's what we call slow speed. It's one length of the table. We also have what we call medium speed, which will be 2 lengths of the table. It's your standard lag speed. When we hit the ball this time, we shoot the ball down to that end. When the cue ball comes back to this end of the table, it will end up within anywhere from the cushion out about 12 inches. In other words, 1 diamond length out. To go do 3 cushions lengths, we go like this. We hit it like this, down to that end, down to this end, and it goes back up to that end of the table. And as it slows down, you notice now I hit that just a little bit less, but I'm still within that range of 3 lengths of the table. It's in that 1 diamond distance. And the last speed, of course, is the most difficult one to control. It's called fast speed. It's where we go 2 lengths of the table, 4 lengths. Just like this. Goes up and down, comes back to this end of the table, going 4 lengths, just like this. This is what we call double lag speed, and it's used in some exotic situations of speed control where you have to hit a ball really fast. So once you get in touch with these speed controls, you're going to have a much better game, according to Dr. Q. Almost everyone in a game of pool wants to have a wonderful stroke. This is a common element of the game that people seem to have a problem with, and what I'm going to show you now is a way to develop a better stroke. Stroke is defined as a throwing motion of your cue stick. It's kind of like throwing a lasso, so to speak. It's 2 parts. The first part is actually the act of hitting the cue ball, the striking of the cue ball, the method of hit, and that technique that's used to achieve that. Now at the table here, you notice we have a cue ball, and what I'm going to illustrate is how we actually stroke a cue ball properly. You go back and forth in your initial rhythm speeds, back and forth, just like that. It can be at any particular speed that you want to. Then at the last movement, you stop at the cue ball, come back very slow to set the energy, hesitate for about 1 or 2 seconds, and just release the cue stick through the cue ball in a throwing motion. Now, one of the aspects of practicing this exercise is to just put a whole rack of balls on the pool table without a cue ball. This will now be a way of practicing your stroke with 3 different rhythm speeds. The first time we're going to shoot is going to be the 1 ball in the corner pocket, and this is a wonderful way to really fine-tune that stroke. We go back and forth on the 1 ball. Just pick any pocket you want. We're going to shoot it in the corner pocket. Come back real slow and release real slow with the throwing motion. Then we walk around to this side of the table. Now the idea of walking back and forth is to create a rhythm, back and forth, nice fluency. Chalking up again, coming down your shot. On the 2 ball this time, going back and forth, coming back real slow, and releasing at medium speed or lag speed. And then coming back to the other side of the table again and lining up for the 3 ball. Going back and forth in the same technique on the pre-shot routine, coming back real slow and releasing at 3 lengths of the table speed or the ordinary speed. Once you practice this, going back and forth using 15 balls in a rack, you're pretty much going to have your stroke down the way you want to play a better game with. So, practice this exercise, you'll have a great stroke, according to Dr. Q.
One of the most important elements of your pool game, of course, is a good follow-through. This gives you the accuracy you need no matter what kind of shot you're shooting. Most people have a tendency to punch the cue ball a little bit and they lose their accuracy. So I'm going to give you a way of practicing your follow-through to give you a better and more accurate game. You notice on this setup we have 2 chalks here on each side of the spot. Each one's about 4 inches to the left, 4 inches to the right. We also have this piece of chalk about 6 to 8 inches back of the spot, and it's in line with this diamond. So if you line up over this piece of chalk, which resembles the cue ball, that would be where the cue ball would be with the tip placement, and then we go back and forth, come back real slow, hesitate, and extend over the spot. This is called follow-through, over the spot. Just keep going back and forth, doing that for about 1 minute to 2 minutes. That'll program the muscle memory for a good straight follow-through. Then to practice that in actually a ball hitting situation, place a stripe in the position of the chalk in the same line and just follow through the same way you did before over the spot, just like this. The ball will go down, come back to this end of the table, and come back to the end of your stick. And when the ball comes back to the end of your stick, you're practicing a great follow-through and you're going to have the accuracy in the game that you need, according to Dr. Q. Once we've practiced all the fundamentals of the game that you've learned so far, we need to bring that all together in what we call a pre-shot and a stroking technique of rhythm and fluency. This is going to bring everything together for you so that you'll have a very, very consistent game. You notice here on the rail we have 5 balls lined up to practice this exercise, and I'm going to shoot each ball into the side pocket, and I'm going to go through the same routine on each one. The first thing we have to do is remember our pre-shot routine where we chalk up, chalk down, go through your pre-shot routine strokes, back and forth, come back real slow, hesitate, and extend through the shot. Coming back again, chalking up, chalking down, going into position with your bridge, nice fluent grip, coming back real slow, and releasing through the shot. Coming back again, chalking up, chalking down, one more time, real slow, release to the shot. This is done for 5 consistent ball movements, back and forth, programming the muscle memory, programming the mental imagery of the shot, back and forth, to develop that nice, smooth rhythm and fluency. Back and forth, and release. If you do 5 balls and you do that for 3 reps, what you're going to develop in your game is a tremendous rhythm and fluency, and you'll be looking like a professional very quickly, according to Dr. Q.